What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast, a weekly video game show where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined by Jerrett Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. Or bonjour. Is buongiorno Italian?
It's Italian.
Okay, and then bonjour is French, obviously.
So it actually does have like a hard G sound in Italian, and the
buongiorno?
soft kind of J sound is more the French one. But you know what? Language is fluid, and you can
I knew what you were saying.
Together as many words as you want to.
There we go. There we go, indeed. But in case you did not know, Team Chat Podcast comes out every single week on Tuesday, 9 a.m. You can subscribe to the show across podcast services around the web, such as iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and now Google Podcasts is another new one that we've added to our ranks since Google just released that new platform. You can also find us on iHeartRadio and a couple others, but you can check teamchatpodcast.com/where to listen to find all the places where you can listen. Oh, you can also watch each episode of the podcast either on YouTube or Twitch, so subscribe and check us out there. Leave us a review, rate us, all that fun stuff as well, because it's good to know. If you have any feedback or questions, comments, whatever, send us an email, teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can find us on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Finally, we are a completely listener-supported show, so if you would like to support us because you're really loving what we're doing, you can head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. And in return, we will give you a cool perk, like getting these episodes early before their general Tuesday release. Again, that is patreon.com/teamchatpodcast. And a big thank you to all our current patrons who help make every single episode possible.
Love you, boo.
Yes, you are our boos, our waifus, and husbandos.
There we go. Yeah, they are all our waifus and hazubandos.
Put it in. Oh, it's hazubandos?
I say hazubando. Some people just say husbando. But I don't like that. I don't think that sounds as fun.
Hazubando or
Hazubando. I say hazubando.
Hazubando.
But a lot of people just say husbando.
All right. We'll leave it up to you.
Again, language is fluid. They're made up words anyways.
This is true.
You can do whatever you want.
This is true. Do whatever you want with all this information. But before we get to our big topic of today, we do have to catch up on some news.
Okay, so coming soon and out now, as of this episode's air date on July, what will it be today, the 11th? Yes, it will be.
Yes.
It's the 11th. We have, we kind of talked about this last week, a very silly game, 2020, which is stylized as 20XX. The Xbox One version only comes out today, July 11th. The other versions for PS4 and Switch came out yesterday on June 10th. Also tomorrow, the Thursday? I'm all over the place with my calendar. But on July 13th, we have Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for the Nintendo Switch and the 3DS. We also have Earthfall for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Again, that's July 13th. We have a game nobody asked for, and I assume nobody wants. Hotel Transylvania 3,
Ew.
Monsters Overboard.
That sounds like a terrible port of a game.
That sounds terrible. That sounds very unfortunate. PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. That's also July 13th. Coming soon, we have July 17th, Sonic Mania Plus. Switch, PS4, Xbox One. Do you want to try this again?
No, go for it. Just keep going. I'm just messing around and stuff. You're good. You're good. Keep going.
Just throwing off my groove, moving around so much.
Sorry. Now you know how it feels and all the times that I messed up the intros. So it's all good.
Yeah, but you messed those up yourself.
I know, but we've done this enough. You should be able to roll with it. You know?
Anyways, July 17th, Sonic Mania Plus for the Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. Mother Gunship for PS4, Xbox One, and PC, also July 17th. And then I skipped it because of the last one, and it's the one that I really, really love, so I wanted to save the best for last. Okay. Also July 13th, Octopath Traveler for the Switch.
There it is. I still didn't have a chance to go back and finish it yet.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to.
I know.
You can finish it the day before or
I can
the
finish
day
it the day
of.
after, and I can finish it anytime before I actually buy the game.
Watch them discontinue the demo the day it comes out.
Seriously.
That seems like something Nintendo would do.
They might actually do that.
They might.
I don't feel like they have a lot of demos. They always announce the demos before the game comes out, so maybe they'll be like, "Ooh, nope, cut off."
That, yeah,
I got time. I got like a couple more days by the time this recording. Oh, I mean, when this comes out, I got a couple more days. I got like a week as the time of this recording, so I'm set. I'm good. I think it should be all right to finish it up.
All right, well, chop.
All right, before we get to our main topic, one more bit of news. Again, our PS4 Glacier White used giveaway is up and running. You have until the end of the month. I believe the 31st falls on a Tuesday, and that is when the contest will end. But you have until then to go on and enter. We've got a couple of different ways you can enter up and get a few more entries. So check that out. Again, you can find the link on our social media. We'll be tweeting about it a lot. So Just go and search in all those places, and you should be able to find our giveaway. I'll also try to have a page for it up on our website too, teamchatpodcast.com. So go check it out there. You can find all these fun ways to enter in the contest and hopefully take home a Glacier White PS4.
Used 500 gigs.
Yep, there you
all
go.
All cords included.
Completely cleaned.
Professionally cleaned.
Professionally cleaned. It's got all the bells and whistles of a new one, just slightly been cared for and loved before.
I've decided I've called him Kevin.
Kevin?
Like I technically never called him that before, but I feel like
but now
the
he needs a name,
PS4's name, it's Kevin.
Okay, so you'll win
He's
Kevin.
always been a Kevin. Yeah, you'll be some lucky, fortunate soul will be able to take Kevin home with them.
Nice. So good luck to you all. But now we get on to our main topic, which is a continuation of our top 10 lists. We had a little detour last week going in talking about Captain Spirit and Octopath Traveler demos, but now we're back on track with this series to talk about our games 6 through 4 before we come back in the final episode to talk about games 3, 2, and, of course, number 1. So, who kicked it off last time? I don't remember now. I think I did.
Yeah, you did, because
Okay.
you were trying to figure out whether or not it was going to be, I think, a Call of Duty game.
Assassin's Creed 2 or Donkey Kong
Assassin's
Country.
Creed. Oh, just kidding.
Yeah, no Call of Duty
I lied
in there.
about both of those.
So then why don't you go ahead and kick us off then
All
with
right.
your number 6.
So my 6 through 4, honestly, I feel like this middle section was the hardest one to do for me because the bottom ones were a little bit easier to fill in because I was thinking, well, what kind of just barely makes the list? What do I love but doesn't deserve top 5, etc.
Right.
But this awkward, very middle spot, which includes the halfway point, I really struggled with this section because I feel like the next 3 games I'm going to talk about are all equally good in their own way. They are just 3 wildly different games, one of which I have talked about at least a few times before. So, coming in at number 6 for me, Pikmin 2 for the Wii specifically. Okay. No, so Pikmin 2 did come out on the GameCube, and I played it on GameCube, but then I replayed it and finished it. So I was the more hardcore with that version on Wii as opposed to the GameCube version.
Yeah.
That was largely because they released a Nintendo like Classics or Favorites edition or something that was only $20 of Pikmin 2 for the Wii, whereas the GameCube edition of Pikmin 2 became this cult classic, and it was so niche at the time that it became a collector's item very quickly. And I could not find it under $100 anywhere.
Yeah.
Even though I still owned my GameCube, you could not find Pikmin 2 at a reasonable price. So when they put it on the Wii and it was only $20, I was like,
yes, please.
They have blessed me.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the controls from the GameCube version, which felt a little bit more natural, they did cross over to the Wii's nunchuck format reasonably well. Nothing was too difficult to get a hang of, and actually the motion controls in terms of where you could aim your Pikmin on screen when you're, for example, trying to launch them at a specific target, those felt really natural in the game.
Good.
So in terms of them porting it from the GameCube to the Wii, I feel like that transition went reasonably well, really kind of as well as it could have. It could have been worse. It could have been a train wreck.
Yep.
That does sometimes happen with games, and especially ones that aren't necessarily profit powerhouses. They especially can sometimes fall by the wayside when those port processes happen. But Pikmin 2, similar to some of the other games on my list, is in the top 10, as opposed to the original Pikmin. Pikmin 3 is so negligible. Who could even put it on their list? It's terrible.
Okay.
But Pikmin
Spoiler
2,
for me,
yeah,
having never played
spoiler, it's well, I think it's terrible.
I know.
Some people
Other
love
people
it.
might love it, but still, that's not. This is our top 10 list, so we can rank how we want.
Exactly. Everybody else is wrong.
Throw shade however we want.
Exactly. And there's so much shade and sassery and sarcasm to be had in Pikmin 2. And I feel like that's one of the things that sets it apart from Pikmin 1. So Pikmin on its own, the first game, was unique and sometimes not good for me as a gamer in the terms of that it was on a natural timer. The game Pikmin 1 was already on a timer. You played as Olimar, this little creature. He's called a... Oh God, I don't know what he's called.
Okay, you're done. You're done. You can't go on if you can't even remember that basic thing.
But is
A Hocotonite.
I don't know what his actual
I'll look it up.
species
I'll look it up for you
is.
while you're going on
Anyways, like Olimar, he's from this planet called Hocotate. He works for a company called Hocotate Freight. So he has a little spaceship. He goes around space doing deliveries, I guess, but he's struck by, I think, an asteroid or something.
Oh, no.
And he crash lands onto what we know as Earth. And on Pikmin 1, you had basically 30 days. So the game was on a timer of 30 days. You had 30 days to collect back up all of the pieces of your ship, which was damaged on impact, reassemble it, and get off the planet, which was how you won the game. And along the way, of course, you would utilize Pikmin, the indigenous creatures of Earth, which are these semi-humanoid and sentient little tiny creatures, no more than the size of batteries, that are basically little human plants. And they are fantastic and wonderful, and you come to love them very dearly. But that timer, that 30-day timer, was both very stressful and I felt an unnecessary constraint on the game. So in that way, I felt like Pikmin 2 did itself a huge favor by totally doing away with the timer system. So Pikmin 2, one of the best things I think it did for the game is they really managed to hit on what I feel like most gamers loved of Pikmin 1, which was collecting stuff for any reason. It didn't have to be important stuff. Yeah, just hoarders. Just like, I want to go out there, I want to use my Pikmin in fun and interesting ways in these environments. I want to beat up creatures and get stuff. I just want crap. So the entire premise of Pikmin 2 is more ridiculous than ever because, Olimar, he gets back to Hocotate, his home planet. His company, Hocotate Freight, has gone bankrupt.
Which they're calling them Hocatations.
Oh, Hocatations. Hocotatians.
Hocatatians,
I'll say Hocatations. I think that sounds more natural. Anyways, so he gets back to his home planet. His boss is like, bad news. I got in some trouble with some loan sharks, and we are now bankrupt.
We need more stuff.
Yeah, and Olimar is like, oh my god, this is terrible. And he drops kind of on the ground a bottle cap, which is the only treasure that he brought back to Hocotate with him as kind of like a memento of his time. And his boss sees the bottle cap, and their like technologically advanced ship also sees the bottle cap. It kind of beams it up, analyzes it, and the ship is like, wow, this thing is worth a lot of money. And the boss is like, what was that now?
You saved us.
You say it's worth money? And so he's basically like, you have to go back to that planet right now. Here, take your coworker Louie, who is terrible. Louie is the worst. But he's like,
here,
take
you have to
Louie.
like go find Louie at different parts.
Exactly. So you take Louie back to Earth with you, and your entire goal for Pikmin 2 is just collect treasures. And treasures are in the form of delightful Earth objects. Things like batteries, for example, like very brand heavy items. The localization teams for these games must have had a terrible time of bringing them over because there's a lot that's just so brand specific to a region. You have to make that appeal to your local consumer or it's not going to be quite as fun.
Yeah.
So for example, they would have Duracell batteries. They would have chocolate bonbons.
It's interesting that they were able to get the licensing to use those too.
Not all of them were the original brands from Japan. So that's what I'm saying is that they had to change a lot of the
Well, that's what I mean,
branding.
but I'm surprised they were able to, for a smaller series game, to be able to get the license to use like Duracell and all that.
True.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just good publicity for them.
Yeah.
A Duracell probably looked at that email from Nintendo and they were like, Sure, whatever,
us
man.
Partnering with Nintendo in
They
some way.
probably
Yeah, that's
just
probably a good
did
idea.
not care at all.
Yeah.
Other things would be like glue sticks. You find a tube of Mario-themed paint from the Mario Paint games.
Cool.
There's all kinds of fun stuff peppered around the game that is just interesting to find. And moreover, when you bring them back, this is one of my favorite features of the game, and it's largely why I find it so endearing. When you bring treasures back to the ship, your ship, like I said, is kind of sentient. Like, it's a artificial intelligence, super smart ship, but it's such a bitch to you the whole time. Like, your ship is really sassy. It clearly hates you. It thinks you're stupid. And it's like, come on, chop chop, we got to get this over with. And when you bring it treasures, it will appraise them. And it will give them, you're aliens. You don't know what these things are. So it will have to give everything whatever best name it can come up with. And I know I've mentioned this particular what am I trying to say here? Example before, but one of my favorite ones is still when you bring back a glove to the ship, it appraises it, and of course Olimar and Louie, they're only about the size of fingers, right? So the ship beams up the glove, appraises it, and it titles it the 5-man knapsack. Because from its view, it's like, this is a sleeping bag that sleeps 5 people. And it just cracks me up. Like,
yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. I love that they took the time to make it that ridiculous. And they made it fun in such a whimsical, lighthearted way, even though the outer casing of the game kind of has a post-apocalyptic feel to it, because you're on Earth, you're finding all of these remnants of human civilization, but there are never humans around. Like, there are levels where you appear to be going inside of houses, and, you know, you're just in the walls. You can't really see the houses, but it looks like you're entering structures. You never hear people. You never see people. The only things you run into are these very non-native creatures that are the enemies of the Pikmin. And these are things like spotty bulb orbs, or these like scary crane thingies that pop out of the ground and eat your Pikmin alive, but they're just like a crane head and neck. And if they actually pop out of the ground, there's not much more to them than that. They're terrifying.
Yeah.
So clearly there's just a bunch of mutants that are on what is obviously Earth. And it's like, where'd all the people go? Where'd all these weird mutant creatures go? Where did the Pikmin come from? Why are they here?
Right.
Why do they look to me as their god and commander? I, Olimar, king among Hokatations. Why do they take orders from, you know, the likes of Louis and Olimar? So it's a lot of interesting lore that I just like to ponder on.
Yeah.
The game never answers any of those questions, nor does it even try to.
Just leaves you to make your
And
own
I
conclusions.
love that about it. It just kind of peppers in these details of the world around you, but leaves you to your own devices. You do still have days, so there's a day cycle, and then night, which is you have to be back at the ship at night, otherwise your Pikmin and you will get eaten alive by all of the various denizens of Earth because they come out at night and destroy you. And all the while that you're toiling around in the daytime, you are, of course, trying to maximize your resources. You have to be able to create more Pikmin if you don't have enough. You have to be able to kill creatures, and they might kill your Pikmin in turn, which then cues you to have to make more Pikmin. You have to be able to harvest power-up items, and of course you have to get treasures. And treasures are weighted. So let's say, for example, that my Pikmin are going to go get an empty can. Well, 10 Pikmin can lift one empty can. It's not that heavy. But if they're later trying to go get a cell phone or a dumbbell, 10 Pikmin can't lift that dumbbell. You're going to need 100 Pikmin for that. And certain items will be in certain places of the map where only certain colors of Pikmin can go, because they all have basic attributes that are part of their coloring. So red Pikmin are immune to fire, blue can swim in water, yellow are immune to electricity, and they can jump extra high. And of course in Pikmin 2 they introduced the white Pikmin, which are smaller than all others and more delicate and terrible fighters, but they are poisonous. So if a creature eats them, it will die.
Okay.
So that's a mechanic I never used, because of course I won't kill any of my Pikmin for any reason.
Right, you like
but
to
the
keep them
white
alive.
Pikmin are balanced out by the purple Pikmin, who, it is a crime that they replaced purple Pikmin in Pikmin 3 with rock Pikmin. They do the same thing, they just made them less cute and less enjoyable, because the purple Pikmin, they're basically little purple sumo wrestlers, and like every time you throw them at something, they slam down on it like little sumo guys, and like will flatten it. Like they'll flatten stuff like little pancakes, and you're just like, this is the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. And purple Pikmin, they're my babies. They're my children above all other children. They're more precious to me than all others. And it's just such a complete package of a game, which is why I think Pikmin 2 is arguably the best of the trilogy, and the best of all of the other weird side Pikmin games that they have since created, which are mere shadows of former glory, which is encapsulated in Pikmin 2.
Well, there you have it.
I could go on about Pikmin 2 for a while.
I know, because I mean, it's one you've brought up before on a couple past episodes, or
man.
at least, you know,
there's
you brought it up a lot. But yeah, there's so much about
There's
it that
so
you can
much
go
to
into,
talk
especially if it's one of, you know, getting here close on your number 6 of your list. You know, it's a lot to, you got a lot of thoughts and feelings about it since it's that high. So, you know, you got a lot of opinions on it. I don't blame you for that at all.
We're not even talking about the mechanic of being able to strategically use saves or going back in time.
I remember
on
you
the
talking
game
about that
system.
before.
That's a very important part, especially if you're trying to get a no-kill Pikmin run.
Yeah.
a parental run, as I like to call it, because these are your children.
Right.
You have to take care.
You want to keep them safe.
You can't just be throwing them into the water willy-nilly to drown. You have to take care of them. So, anyways, I could happily go on, but I will not take up the whole episode
for the sake of time.
talking about Pikmin 2.
All right, well, my number 6 game is one we've actually talked about it a little bit recently because it hit on the Game Informer top 300 list, and it was actually it might have actually been number 6 or 7 on their list.
Oh, wait, let me see if I can guess it. Was it an older game?
No.
And you already said Red Dead.
Yes.
Shit.
It's within, oh crap, when did this come out? It's in the 2010s.
Assassin's Creed 3?
No.
Damn it. In the 2010s. Oh, The Last of Us cannot possibly be your number 6.
No.
Okay.
I'm glad that you corrected that,
Yeah.
that error. Oh, wait. Ooh, I was wrong. Sorry. Late thousands.
Late thousands. Halo.
No, actually.
Dang it.
All right, well, I'm just going to say it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Oh, okay. I guess I thought you had already talked about that one.
No, I think we might have brought it up a little bit before, but we did talk about it fairly in depth in the one. So I don't want to spend and harp too much time on it really, because my next game is where a lot of time is going to be spent.
Is that one The Last of Us?
No.
Oh.
It's not going to tell you where that one hits.
Well, all right.
People might be able to guess, but
I think they can probably still guess.
But yeah. So anyway, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was the big changing point in the Call of Duty series in that it shifted away from World War II to modern day time, and that in and of itself was a big move. Like you'd always been storming the beaches of Normandy, fighting in France and all these other places on the Soviet front and all this in Africa as part of World War II. But now here you are in like a modern day conflict, which feels very real because you're hunting down terrorists for a lot of it in Middle Eastern places. So especially in 2007, obviously the war in Afghanistan and Iraq is still going on now, but even then it was still even more fresh than it is now. So it had this more of a real world feel and a real world impact to it that I felt like that made the story more engaging. Now it did actually have a really great story. You take the role of, I think, Soap. Is that what your name?
Soap?
It's like a code name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, John Soap McTavish. And so you start as a British Special Air Service recruit, and you go. And the first couple missions are like, you got to do your training run so you can get a handle of the controls, learn the different mechanics, and all this other stuff. And then you go on and do this nighttime assault on a cargo ship to try to retrieve this weapon. You meet your leader, Captain Price, who is a badass character.
I think you've talked about Captain.
I talked about Captain
sounds
Price
familiar.
before in one of our side or non-playable character episodes, something like that.
Yeah, I remember.
He's just really
Captain
surly
Price.
and sarcastic, and he's got this badass handlebar the chop the one that goes down over the mustache, but there's nothing on the chin.
It's
he's
the combo
badass.
chops to stash.
Exactly. And so and he's
That's
just
a
really
bold look, sir.
It is, but he pulls it off handsomely.
You could try the chops to stash.
I've done chops before.
Do it for your birthday.
No, I always usually do crazy
Before
hairstyles.
we forget, I know it's belated by now, but let's all give Jerrett a belated happy birthday. By the time this episode comes out, it will have passed, but yeah.
Thank you.
Good job
Appreciate
on living another year of life.
But anyway, so you meet Captain Price, and yeah, he's no nonsense, hard ass soldier, but obviously makes sense. He's been in the force for a while. He knows what to do to keep himself and his men alive, and so he doesn't take any nonsense from you while you're trying to do your stuff.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are you part of the Army, Navy, Air Force?
Well, this guy, you're technically British Special Forces.
Oh, that's right. Touche.
So this one
sir.
actually, just like previous Call of Duty games, you do jump around to a couple different roles. So you are Soap McTavish in the first part. Then you switch over to Sergeant Paul Jackson, who is a Marine.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that's actually... And then at one point later on in the game, you actually get to play as Captain Price in a flashback episode, in a flashback mission. And so there's all these different things that are added in. Not only the modern setting, which means for modern weapons, modern enemies, modern, all this other different things.
So you're hunting down, cannons, right?
No, not in this one. Not that modern. But you're going on the hunt for this leader of the Russian Ultranationalist Party. Sorry, I'm having to go back and do a little bit of research on this. Imran Zakayev is who you're hunting down. But you're also looking for al-Assad, who is a commander of the revolutionary forces in the Middle East and an ally. So they're kind of like working all together. And so, but this one is great because it introduced, one, it has one of the best campaign missions of a shooter ever. And it's where it's the flashback mission where you're going back as Captain Price when when he's being trained and he's like being a sniper to go take out Imran Zakayev in like the 80s or 80s or 90s and stuff.
And he failed. And it's
well, he does.
Him
yes, because you're still hunting him. But Zakayev only has like one arm, and you realize that in this mission that Price is the reason why he only has one arm because he shoots off an arm instead of killing him and all this other stuff. But it was like one of the tensest missions ever because there's this part, you're in full ghillie suit, camouflage suit, trying to like hunt around. You have to be super quiet. You have to kill everybody with like headshots, or else you'll set off an alarm and just be overrun quickly. There are sometimes be guard dogs you've got to watch out for. But there's one part where you're running across a field and your commander tells you, like, get down. And you drop to the ground and a convoy of enemy tanks, trucks, and soldiers like walks by you and you have to like slowly crawl out of their pathway and all this other stuff and just stay still laying down. You can't stand up. You can't move too fast. Oh my God, it is so tense. And so then, of course, though, you have to get to this point and then you have to wait to where you're scoping out for Zakayev to get there. You have to watch and then try to take him out. No matter what you do, you're not going to kill him because it's obviously just the setup, but still you have to get that hit and then you have to get out and you're like chased by helicopters, chased by guys, and it just becomes this super stealthy and then super frenetic mission later on at the end part of it. And it's one of the greatest. And not only did it then kick off the Modern Warfare series in Call of Duty, which is an excellent series, and Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 were all great games. Modern Warfare 2 is also notable for its mission, the No Russian one, where they go, that's right. Like very controversial one where you have the airport shooting and all that. And then Modern Warfare 3, I actually need to go back and play Modern Warfare 3. Of all of them, I haven't played it. I've played it the least. But I remember the final mission of that one, and you're still got Captain Price with you and all that stuff. It's a great, great time. Nice. But the other big thing about it and why this one hits for me, not only was it one of the earlier games that it's one of the games that I've probably spent the most amount of time in, because I played it on computer, actually, not console.
Oh, on your Mac?
Yeah. I had a great time with it.
Amazing.
I actually had my friends growing up actually more played, like I had a buddy of mine who played on Mac too. And so he's actually who wanted to bought it for me because I played over at his house and we played like some co-op stuff on it, some online multiplayer.
Yeah.
Which the online multiplayer part is where I spent a lot of my time. But I also went back because it had like this arcade modes and different things like this where you could replay these certain story missions. War Pig was my favorite one to go play. That one was a great mission.
It sounds very silly.
It's not. You're trying to go rescue a tank that's been broken down in the middle of this city, and you're just constantly being shot at from every direction, and it gets really intense and crazy. But the multiplayer part of it is where I played most of my time. And probably the only game that I've played more than the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 multiplayer is probably Overwatch at this point. But I have no way to know how many hours I played in Modern Warfare 4 as opposed to Overwatch. It might still be higher than what I've spent in Overwatch.
You don't have like your old save file on your computer.
I don't think it tells.
Oh, does it really not?
And no, at this point, I don't have the old save file. I've had that uninstalled and reinstalled so many times across different computers. There's no way I still have the original one. But still, it changed up the multiplayer by putting in a different perk system or kill streak system. That is what it gave, whereas the previous ones didn't have it. So this way, if you got 3 kills, you could do a sonar that would reveal enemy position on a map. If you got 5, you could do airstrike, I believe is what it was. And then if you got 6, you could call in an attack helicopter that just like hovered around on top and just mowed down people for an incredibly long amount of time.
What I just heard you say is that if you get enough kills, you can use Hanzo's Sonic Arrow, you can use Doomfist's Meteor Strike, or you can become a Bastion. That's all I heard in that order. Just change if you put it over in Overwatch. Exactly. And so I remember, though, obviously this is the first iteration of it. It impacted and changed the gameplay of multiplayer immensely. Not to mention, it also really gave you a lot more detailed loadouts where you could choose different kind of perk systems that you could add in. Like, you could start with extra grenades or carry 2 major weapons instead of minor ones and all these other different things. So it totally changed up and switched up the multiplayer. And that has now been the basis for all other multiplayers going forward. They've obviously changed it. Different games have thrown in different little changes here and there, but for the most part, it's still based off of, it has the same core as what was based off of Modern Warfare 4 or Modern Warfare. And
it was just great. You know, I remember playing it. That was with my buddies. We would play like pistols and knives. You could only have this loadout. So you had to always just run around and either like stab with a knife or shoot with a pistol. You couldn't get other guns. And, you know, I had a great way to build out custom matches so you could do that more easily. But man, for the amount of hours I spent in that game, it just had to go onto my top.
So would you say then, because it was on IGN's list really high towards the top, would you say that it's pretty, Game Informers. Would you say that it's pretty well agreed upon that Modern Warfare is one of, if not the best loved Call of Duty games? You think that it's like the
I think,
top
if you were to put it up there, it's definitely probably the apex.
What would you say its closest competition within Call of Duty is?
Probably,
because coming from someone who has never played any of the games, I have no idea.
I'd honestly say probably one of the Black Ops games. Probably, I'd say for me, Black Ops. I loved Black Ops because it takes place in the Vietnam War. So it's more modern than World War II, but not as modern as Modern Warfare. And it just had a really fun feel. You were like special ops in that one also. And I really enjoyed the maps, the storyline in that one. The multiplayer also had some really great maps in that one too. For me, it would probably be Black Ops would be my next one.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was a great one too.
But Call of Duty Modern Warfare clearly beat out Black Ops.
Oh yeah. Nice. It's my favorite one of the series.
So like by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and I haven't really found one that I've enjoyed more than that one. And that's why, I mean, it's spoiler, it's the only one on my list of Call of Duty games on my list because I think, it's the one that has had the most formative in being able, it's sad that like they haven't been able to really recapture that magic that Modern Warfare had in the later iterations of it. You know, they started going super futuristic, which Advanced Warfare was a pretty good one too.
But I feel like most people did not like that change to the future combat.
And the one that came
settings.
out, oh man, I don't remember what it's called now. What was it? It's not because
what's the one where you're like fighting clowns?
World War II is the one they just came out with, which I've enjoyed that one, but I moved on since because I needed other things to play. I had other things to play. Man, what was it? What was the one before that? I don't even remember because I didn't play it.
Call of Duty Guns in Space.
Infinite Warfare.
Okay,
Infinite
that's
Warfare. That's what it was. And it is in space.
Really close.
But anyway, that one they actually packaged with a remaster of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I've wanted to get it. I've wanted to get the remaster, but it's still like $30, $40, and I just don't want to pay that for the remaster.
I mean, maybe they think it's that good that it still holds.
It's almost
that
up to the point where you can buy the combo of Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare for the same as just the standalone version of Modern Warfare. And I'm just
clearly,
I'm just waiting for a sale.
Infinite Warfare. Clearly, Infinite Warfare is not carrying its weight in that bundle.
No one liked
That's
that
just
one.
shameful.
So. But yeah, so that is why Modern Warfare, for its great campaign story that kicked off a great line of the games, because Modern Warfare 2 and 3 are, like I said, great games, but then it's more for the impact of that it had on the multiplayer and the immense amount of hours that I spent in the multiplayer is why.
Were you able to play on a Mac against people on PC, or did the servers not work?
No, I think it worked that way.
Did they work?
I think because I think it's like you still just play. It's not like you're on different networks and server networks as like with console, I think. So I believe I was playing against both.
I mean, that's just something that like I'm obviously very ignorant about. I have no idea how those kinds of wires cross or work.
Same.
So I've never even thought about it before because I certainly don't game online competitively.
Right.
So,
on
PC.
Yeah. But no, so Modern Warfare, great game. So what's your number 5?
Switching gears radically. Just
I'm wondering if we're going to
hard.
have a crossover.
We are. I knowing what I know of you and a previous episode we did together, I am very confident that we're going to have a game that crosses over.
Yeah.
We'll see if it's in the same spot.
Okay.
Because Jerrett and
if it is, we'll just talk about it together.
Yeah, we'll just talk about it together. Jerrett and I have not looked at each other's lists.
No, we have no idea. We want the surprise to be genuine, our reactions to be real.
He knows what I'm about to say because he's heard me talk about it 1,000 times before.
But I don't know what this is.
But it has moved since you last heard about it.
Okay.
Coming in at number 5, moved down a few spaces. The Legend of Dragoon.
Oh, it's moved down a lot of spaces.
It's moved down quite a few spaces.
Damn!
So, obviously, this is largely just because it's been shifted down because since the time we first talked about it when we first started the podcast years ago, the podcast, like I said, has incentivized me to play a lot more games just in terms of quantity. And that exposure to more games has led to far more entries on my list. And many of them are very, very good. And at least three newer games are a big part of the reason why The Legend of Dragoon has been displaced from its previous top 3 status. Okay. That being said, I still think it is one of the... I know that it
Where did it sit, though, before? I thought it was number 1.
Was it number... I
honestly
Wind
don't
Waker
remember.
Was number 1.
Oh, it might have been.
I think Okami was number 3.
So it was your number 2,
and maybe Legend of Dragoon was number 2.
Man, so that's quite a drop for it.
Yeah, it's dropped a number of spaces. Which really, you might even be able to argue that its entry on my list is questionable in the first place, largely because it is my nostalgia pick.
I've got a nostalgia, a couple nostalgia picks.
It's one of my nostalgia picks that is largely being booned on its way onto the list simply by my incredibly fond memories of it. But you know what? That has credit to it. That has weight and that has merit. So in terms of its status as a JRPG, which is, if you're new to the show and you've never heard me talk about The Legend of Dragoon.
If you'd like to hear her full thoughts on it, go back to episode 1, episode 10, episode 15, episode 17, 18, 19.
It's on there a few times. So in terms of its status as a JRPG, it is like... clearly not on anybody's top 10 of anything. It probably wouldn't even make the top 100 JRPGs of all time. It did have the incredibly bad fortune to come out very shortly after Final Fantasy VII did.
Which kind of dwarfed everything that came out similar. Part of it is that Final Fantasy VII really cannibalized every competitor in the market at the time. Legend of Dragoon just kind of got super glossed over because Final Fantasy VII was out. Followed by, of course, Final Fantasy VIII, which would have come out, I think, a little bit after The Legend of Dragoon did. Dragoon came out in Japan 1999 and the US the year 2000. So technically it wasn't that long ago, but boy has that game not aged well. I've seen the couple times you've shown us the trailers for it or some other stuff like that, or even the artwork for it. You can only find artwork that's in 200 by 300 dimensions.
Yeah, it's really
makes making thumbnails a pain in the ass.
And unfortunately, a lot of that is because the fan base for the Legend of Dragoon is so small.
Yeah,
it's like me and a handful of other people out there. One of whom is Jerrett Mogan, and the others are 5 people on Tumblr, and the 3 people in Overwatch that have stared at me in the lobby. And then have messaged me on PSN to be like, I love your name.
And what's your name for everyone who doesn't?
Levitz Lives. So again, my PlayStation name, Levitz Lives, is based on The Legend of Dragoon. So one of the heroes from the game is your first partner. So you play as this total dweeb. His name is Dart. He freaking sucks. He's cut and paste protagonist. Dart blows. Everybody else in the game, super great. Except for your forced waifu, Shauna. She's kind of... very basic. I have to save that princess over there. She's not a princess, but that's the gist. So you play as this dude Dart. He's been on a quest for most of his adult youth, trying to track down this thing called the Black Monster, who wiped out his entire town and killed his family and presumably his mother and father as well. So he's been on this quest to find the Black Monster, doesn't find it, comes back to his new pseudo-hometown where Shauna lives, finds it decimated as well, and he's like, what the fuck? 2 towns, 1 life? How did this happen? And everybody in the new town is like, bro, this just happened 3 days ago. You're just a little too late. They totally took Shauna. They took her to a prison. We have no idea what's happening. And Dart's like, motherfucker. They don't really cuss that much in this game, but he runs off to this place called Hell in a Prison, which is where you meet Levitz. And he's like, hey there, son, I'm a knight. We're busting out of here. Team up with me. And you're like, God, I love
You're the best, man.
You're the best, man. Like, he's instantly your friend. He's like, I got a spear and enough spirit to get us out of here. And you're like, yes, you do.
Let's have a great time.
Our dreams will fly on the wings of your strength. Like, that's how I feel about Levitz. So with his help, you manage to bust out of the prison and save Shauna at the same time.
Yep.
But all of this kicks off the overarching story of The Legend of Dragoon, which, much in the style of JRPGs, is very expansive. It is kind of a hallmark of JRPGs that the key crisis, the key goal of the game, almost always revolves around, hey, if we don't succeed, the whole world and potentially the whole universe and or other worlds, other dimensions could all be destroyed.
No pressure.
It's never like a small town problem.
Right.
It's always like the biggest
It's going to be just a band of bandits.
Yeah, no, it's never like that.
It's the universe.
So the whole crux of the Legend of Dragoon universe is that I think it was 11,000 years ago of when you're starting the game, there was this great war fought between these humanoid creatures called Winglies. Very stupid name, but they are basically like just regular humans, but they have like built-in wings, kind of. And they're almost like angels, but clearly evil because they had subjugated humans, who they viewed as a subspecies, not really worthy of being, treated as people.
Yep.
So they had subjugated humanity, treated them as slaves, and then these dragons basically teamed up with humans, and they formed a bond that led to Dragoon warriors. So essentially, you are basically like this dragon warrior, which is super lame on paper, so great in practice, like 10 out of 10 would Dragoon again, and that function comes through in the battle. So obviously, when you're like a regular person, you've got your sword or whatever other weapon you have, and you can do these things called additions, which are, let's say that I'm level 10, and I've got a couple of new additions under my belt. If I slash you once, that's just my basic attack. But if I go at you, there's basically like this little square timer that hones in on the target. And if you can time it just right to hit your strikes to line up with when the square hits the center exactly right, you will continue to do more moves. And those are your additions.
Cool.
So I might get a quick 1-2 addition. And that's obviously a little bit more damage for me. It also might get you some magic points on the side, which you need to power up your Dragoon. But if I get to level 50 and I've got a 10-hitter addition, I can just be like, bam, 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 bam,
just
bam,
taking
bam.
out fools.
The problem is it's very difficult.
Because it's all about timing.
Yeah, it's all about timing, so it's really not easy. And if you want to really get your additions down, you really have to grind and practice. And I like that about the game because it doesn't just hand it to you.
Right.
It's not like... I like to rag on QuickTime events a lot. It kind of is a QuickTime event because it's all about timing,
right?
But it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
And it lines up with the movements and with the sound effects in-game to where when you do get it right, it feels very impactful and you really feel like you just decimated them.
Nice.
And sometimes your regular human attacks can wind up being more powerful than your Dragoon ones.
Well, and it makes sense too, and especially in the way with these tactical RPGs and tactical combat like this, it can feel very much just like you're selecting a movement and you're executing the movement. Speaking from just having played Octopath Traveler a little bit, you just pick from a menu item, you hit that, and that's what you select. You select the enemy you want to damage. But I feel like that gives it a way to make the combat feeling a bit more immersive.
It does. That's right. And that's largely, it definitely needed it. It needed that little bit of extra edge because the combat is really pretty simple. We talked about with Octopath Traveler and with other modern JRPGs like Bravely Default, they've found really creative ways to make turn-based battle way more strategic. Whereas back in the early 2000s, they didn't really have all of those ideas or the technology available to make them happen. So it needed the addition system, and it pulled it off very well. It also very much benefited from the Dragoon system. So you as Dart and all of the members of your party, you are all now the basically new breed of the Dragoons. So Dart has the red Dragoon stone. Your buddy Rose, my favorite, she might be number one waifu. Rose might be my waifu for lifeu. But anyways, Rose has the Black Dragoon. She's the biggest badass on planet Earth. Number one female game character of all time.
Oh.
Don't fight me on that.
Or do. We'd love the debate.
There's Shauna, she's super lame. She gets the white dragoon. It's like the healing class. Levitz has the green one. There's Haishel. He has the thunder dragoon, the purple one. They're all really awesome. And each of the characters that holds this dragoon stone, they're very well fleshed out. They all have their own backstories. And of course, they all have their own function in battle. So they're mostly elemental based. So depending on how you want to play, you might go a little more defensively, go with like a healer and then like maybe one attacker and someone that could just take a lot of damage, like a Kongol, for example. He's your Earth Dragoon guy. Or you could go super aggressive and go, okay, I want Rose and Dart in there. I'm going to equip them with items that make them so fast that they can both go what feels like 10 turns before the enemy can even get one turn in. As speed, you cannot underestimate the value of speed in The Legend of Dragoon. But, there's so many different ways that you can play it because equipment does play a role, the Dragoon system plays a role, and you can retool it to a pretty interesting effect. You can get a lot of different outcomes and a lot of different play styles from what is, on paper, a really simple system. So the gameplay itself, I think the gameplay, the combat holds up. Graphically, it may not have held up at all, which it hasn't. In terms of,
but I mean, what game did from that time period?
Exactly. I mean, obviously, the original Final Fantasy VII as well is being remade because the original, as much as people do love it, has also aged terribly.
Yeah.
Like those PlayStation 1 era games, they're old.
not
They've
pretty.
just aged terribly.
But we've said it before, but it feels like, early 90s games like kind of look one way. Then you got to like 98 through like 2003.
And that's when the J curve started, where they just got infinitely better.
It was like, we got this new technology that lets us do like 3D and some more polygons of movement. But man, those games, they look great then. They do not look great now. And then after that, like 2003, it started kicking back up and you're like, oh, okay, we're looking good again.
Smooth
those polygons.
Everything.
Smooth out them polygons a little bit.
Smooth out those polygons.
Yeah.
So they definitely could use a facelift. It will never get a facelift because it's not a cult classic like Final Fantasy VII is.
Yeah.
But the story was really engaging. It spanned a very diverse world. You got to go to a lot of really interesting towns, a lot of really interesting worlds. You got to meet all kinds of fun side characters. My favorite is still Under the Bridge Drunk Hobo, who just shouts at you to bring him spirits, which when I was 10, I didn't know what he meant.
Like little spirits, like a genie in a bottle?
Yeah, I was like, does he want like...
What do you want, sir?
Yeah, I was like, he wants like a ghost or something. I don't know what he wants. Come to find out, spirits are alcohol. And I was like,
get his drink on.
You bastard. So that's also where I learned the word bastard. I learned
Video
you
games.
bastard because the guards in Helena prison would shout that at you as you were trying to escape. And and me and Andrew, Bro Mogan, we would just go around the house being like, you bastard.
Your
Because
parents
we
like,
didn't
what
know
now?
any better.
You want to say that again?
And they actually never noticed.
Oh,
I don't know.
all right.
We must have been quiet kids. I don't know.
What was that?
But anyways,
the kids.
it
They're
just
making noise again.
it for its time and for what it was, it managed to do a lot with what it had. So I do think that if you can bear the terrible graphics, it really kind of is the game that I would love for more people to go back and play. I know that that's a very unrealistic request, but I love that game. And I think it's still a really good game. And I will defend it to the end.
You know what I'm going to do? Oh. Is he going to try something out? No, sweet. I am like 95% sure. Oh, crap.
While you do that, the one thing that I want from a Legend of Dragoon remake, that I know will never happen, make Dart an interchangeable character in the battle system.
Ah, so you don't have to use him.
You couldn't get rid of him. In the original game, he was your static player, and I hated that. There haven't been static players in the majority of JRPGs ever since then, and that's the way it should be. You should be able to change out everyone in the party at any time you want. So that sucked. That's something that definitely could have used some tweaks.
Got it. Okay, so what I was looking at, you can actually buy Legend of Dragoon in the PS Store. For PS3 and PSP, which I also think means that you can play it on the Vita. So
it's got to be like $1,
it's $6 actually.
It's $6.
So for $6, you can go play this classic of a game.
You can go get a classic piece of JRPG history. You're gonna love it. Maybe you might hate it.
Yeah, I'm not even ever gonna try.
It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
All right, so my number 5 coming in here. And this is one I'm pretty sure we're overlapping on.
It better not be.
I think it is.
All right, what's your number 5?
Life is Strange.
Damn it, that is one of mine. All right,
how do we want to handle this then?
Because we have an overlap, mine is at a different position.
Okay.
So we do not share.
So let's just talk about it. Oh, maybe let's do this. Since we don't, it's going to throw off the numbering a little bit. But so that we can both talk about it, how about we talk about it now? We move your number 4 to, you'll talk about it in the next part. You see what I'm saying? Or what you got? We're figuring out this stuff on the fly. See, this is how much we wanted to be surprised.
So how about instead, I feel like we share a lot of the qualities that we loved about the game in common, but we can talk about it in different ways. And I think some of the things that were really impactful to me may not be the same things that you really found interesting. So why don't you just talk about... You're a mess. Why don't you just talk about the game from your perspective, and we can try to keep both of ours a little shorter.
Yeah, because we'll preface this before I jump into this. We did an extensive episode on this.
It was one of our longest ones.
Like an hour and a half.
You and me.
Because it's just Mogan and I,
talked about
and we went over the whole season. So if you want our real in-depth thoughts on it, hit over, check out that episode. While I'm talking, I'm going to look back to get the actual number.
It was a great episode.
That
was a good one.
Excellent episode. But if you want our full thoughts on it with spoilers, all that different stuff, I'm not going to get into the weeds on it with this.
Because now, with Life is Strange 2 presumably coming out soon,
on the horizon,
now would actually be a fantastic time for people to play Life is Strange if they haven't done so already. So I totally agree that we could try to keep our comments now a little bit more spoiler free.
It's episode 86 if you want to jump back to listen to that in an hour and 23 minutes. Yeah, so it's a long one, but it's a great one.
It's a great one.
Because, it's on our top 10 list for a reason, and for me personally, there have been very few games that I have had a strong emotional reaction to. There have been, a reaction that's other than, oh yeah, this is awesome,
You're such a stereotypical
well, because I normally play
US American male.
I normally play like the more, role-playing, action open world kind of game is what I go for, And so those games have their emotional moments, but that's not like their main component. And I felt like Life is Strange, that was its main component. It obviously had drama. It had these mature themes that we talked about even last week, when we talked about Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit and how those Life is Strange games handle these more adult, mature themes while centering them in the world of teenagers and young children. It took on this yet another level of storytelling that I wasn't used to in video games really at this, when I played it. And I played this game recently. It was last year.
A year ago.
Yeah, barely a year ago when we played through it. So we played through it at the same time so we could do these bigger episodes on it. And so, I thought the characters were all really great, and I had my issues with it, especially like it took me a little bit to get used to the art style of the game.
It is very unique.
It's very unique. It does kind of drive me for a little crazy for how heavy of a dialogue heavy game it is that like, why did the lips not sync with the audio? But that's also just me because I do video, and that's a pet peeve of mine. I can tell in a second if the audio and video is not lined up, and if it's not, it drives me crazy.
Isn't Don't Nod a French studio?
They are, yes.
Gotcha.
And so
the French, am I right? We shouldn't knock them. They gave us one of the greatest games of all time.
I know. We do it in jest and in love. But anyway, so, for those of you not familiar with the story, and again, I'm not wanting to go super spoiler here. Basically, you're this young teenage girl, Max Caulfield, who's attending the Blackwell Academy in Arcadia Bay, Oregon, a fictional town. And, through it, you meet her friend, Chloe, who they were once best friends, but then personal tragedies and families caused them to separate, and they lost contact over time, but now they're reconnecting. And the main thing is that Max learns that she has this ability to rewind time. You learn that literally within the first 10 minutes of the game, so that's not super spoilery. She has this ability to rewind time and alter her decisions in any way that she sees fit. But part of this too is she has these dreams and visions of a massive storm or some cataclysmic event coming towards Arcadia Bay that is threatening it. And all these weird things happen in the surrounding area and during the game as you go through it. And so it leads you to unravel what's happening, what's the cause behind all these things. And then also there's this missing girl, Rachel Amber, who is a friend of Chloe's, and that you're trying to figure out what she is, and does this have any tie-in to these storms and all these different things going on? That's as in-depth as I'm going to go. But like I said, the big thing is I was just literally not prepared for how much of an emotional story the game is.
It's a roller coaster of
happiness, emotions. Not very much happiness, really.
No, not a lot of happiness.
Not
there
really
are
a whole
few
lot.
happy moments, but a lot of it is like sheer terror.
Yes.
Many sadnesses,
Yes.
a lot of tears,
Yes.
and just disappointment.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack in the game because, as I said, it does deal with very mature themes such as...
You could write a dissertation
seriously.
about it, like one single facet of what Life is Strange is trying to get across to you.
Yes. And so, there's different things like sexual assault. I don't. Now I'm just kind of blanking on because it's a lot, but that I remember being the big one: drug use,
dealing,
depression, suicide. All these different things. Which as we grow older and we learn more about the world, we learn that are more and more prevalent in our day-to-day lives than we once assumed when we were growing up. And so it's an interesting take, I feel like, for Don't Nod to have put this in a teenage world, but I think it's very impactful and very effective. It's just one of those things. It's playing through, and it's the 5 episodes. Episode 1, in the beginning of it, I was like, this is interesting, this is fun. Got to the end, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of intrigued. Episode 2, I believe, is when I was like, got to the end of it, and I was like, oh, this is something special.
That is where our paths diverged significantly.
Yes.
And we were both fully on board.
Fully on board. By the end of the game, I remember I was finishing episode 4, and I was like, okay, I'm going to end and then be done. But then I was like, no, I have to play episode 5. And I sat there and played like the last half of episode 4 and then got and played all through episode 5 to finish out the game. And it was one of those things, by the end of the game, there are these moments where you'll have choices, where you have to pick option A, option B. And these are the pivotal moments in the game where you usually can't rewind the time. And it's just going to be, this is how the game's future is impacted. And those moments, especially in the last episode, I found myself spending minutes trying to figure out which one I wanted to pick.
Making
the
that
final
crucial
decision. The final decision, I had to set the controller down, sit back in the chair or the sofa, and ponder.
Just kind of, you had to think it out.
Oh, I had to.
Did you pour yourself a little whiskey? Maybe light a cigar?
Had to contemplate.
Put your head in your hands.
Mood, because so many things that I wasn't expecting to have to deal with.
There were so many things
I had to deal with. And they all come to a head at the end point of the game. And I think I sat there 8-ish minutes trying to decide which one I wanted to do because I knew it was going to have this impact. And I didn't want to see either, honestly, but I had to choose because that's where the story of the game took me. And I remember I was sitting there and she was in the living room too. She was doing something and she looked over and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm thinking this is important.
Sam, you're ruining my emotional thoughts. Gosh.
And so I just wasn't prepared for it. And, I've talked about it and we'll talk about it further because spoiler alert, Last of Us is on my list, but it's, I'm going to, those are like the 2 games that I think have hit me the hardest. And honestly, for the impact of Life is Strange, and I've played it more recently than The Last of Us, but I feel like Life is Strange almost hit me harder emotionally.
Because they're very different
situations and games.
They're wildly different in the themes that they deal with, in the characters that they have, and in their worlds. Obviously, Life is Strange is set in a reality that is exactly like ours. It's just that in the context of these particular characters, you're going through these very not necessarily supernatural, but kind of sci-fi events.
Yep. Definitely so. So it just was this package. And like I said, the gameplay was simplistic, but that's not what you were really there for. It's more of this solving the mystery, unlocking these dialogue trees, figuring out the best answers to the best situations, figuring out the little puzzles along the way.
And it's a game about relationships.
So you build the game and play the game according to the relationships you want to see come to fruition and come to, you either grow or you let die kind of thing. And so it's just a heavy game. Definitely. And like I said, just wasn't expecting it, but the impact that it left me with and the amount and how long I had to sit even after the game thinking about what I had experienced. That's why it definitely hits.
I mean, I still have thoughts where I'm like, man, Life is Strange is a good game.
Yeah.
Because I'll see something that reminds me of it.
Season 2 has like a big shoes to fill.
Yeah, it really does.
So
and I
hopefully
feel
it
like
will
it's
fulfill.
almost unfair for us to hold it to the level that we obviously hold Life is Strange to,
Yeah.
because it's Life is Strange too. Anyways,
But yeah,
because
no.
it's such a good game.
Definitely.
Really, one of my biggest struggles was I really wondered if I was going to put mine even higher than it currently is on my list, because I've already gotten to my number 5.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Exactly.
So, my number 4 is one of the shortest games on my list.
Oh.
But it is one that has had, similar to Life is Strange, a very outsized impact.
I'm trying to think.
You have heard me talk about it
talked
before.
about it. Okay.
I've talked about it with Zach.
And
Do you think you can guess
It's not
it?
Rhyme, because you already talked about Rhyme. It's not Fee, because you already
It's
talked about
similar to both Rhyme and Life is Strange in the type of game that it is, which is this more niche, story-driven,
assuming
not action-based.
Portal?
No? You're
Okay.
you're kind of more off base. It's Firewatch.
Oh, duh.
it's
Yeah.
Firewatch. So I wasn't initially sure that Firewatch was even going to make the list.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I thought about it, the more it was a game where I was like, you know what? I can't think of a bad thing about it.
Yeah.
Literally everything.
It's one I still want to go back and play.
You should, because again, it's very short. You could easily get through all of Firewatch. If you wanted to savor it a little bit more, you could do it in a long weekend. You could do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you really wanted to power through it, you could in fact do it in one sitting. If you weren't looking for the trophies and if you were being a little bit more direct in your approach.
Yeah.
But when I played the game, I played it in a very slow manner. I stretched it out over a couple of weeks, and I feel like that really benefited the way I saw the game, because it gave me time to form a bond with the characters in the game, which Firewatch, very similar to Life is Strange, is all about relationships. You are this character, Henry, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
And your whole story is you start the game really with dialogue-based options. You're not actually viewing any cutscenes. The game is just showing you text on the screen explaining to you who you are. So it's not like you're a cut and paste character. You're not like a cardboard person where you just fill their shoes. You are given a very direct personality. You are Henry. You are a middle-aged man. You're kind of overweight. You have a beard, I think. And you have a wife who has early onset Alzheimer's. And she is very rapidly going. And it has wrought havoc on your life, because you as Henry, you have no idea how to deal with this. So really kind of in what might be one of the more cowardly ways that you could deal with Alzheimer's is he kind of runs away.
Yeah.
So rather than deal with attempting to support his wife, he himself falls into deep depression, because of course they were very much in love. He loves his wife, but he can't deal with who she is becoming. So he basically allows her parents, who I think live in Australia, to care for her, and he goes off into the wilderness of a state park. I think it's a state park in maybe Wyoming or something. We'll just pretend and say it's Wyoming. I'm
Pacific
not actually
Northwest.
sure it is. Yeah. But anyway, so his whole thing is he has become a Firewatch for the summer. It's kind of like basically a summer job. It's a temp job. So he is going to inhabit Tower Alpha. I actually don't remember what it's called. He's going to live in Tower A, and he has on the other end of his walkie-talkie, which is the main form of communication in the game, the person in Tower B who is Delilah. And she has been at the Firewatching job for years and years and years. I think she might be like a full-time state trooper or something, and she's in the park all the time. She is your guide to how to get around, how to read your map, where to go. She also becomes your lifeline, literally, as Henry throughout the course of the game. So, of course, with the walkie-talkie, you primarily navigate through Firewatch through dialogue with Delilah. There's really nobody else that you talk to. It's just you and it's just Delilah. And maybe like a handful of people that you kind of see on the periphery, but that you really don't interact with in any significant way.
Yeah.
So as Henry, you are just doing your thing, you're going through nature, you're having a more or less good time. Obviously, you're kind of trying to temporarily at least forget about the kind of terrible life that you have behind you, waiting for you once this job is over. But you form a relationship with Delilah that is very unique and very special. The voice acting between both Henry and Delilah is really good. I think the woman who played Delilah wound up being nominated for a voice acting award for the game.
I believe that sounds right.
She may have even won. Did she win? Yeah, you can check. But it is very well done voice acting. It doesn't feel forced at all. All of the dialogue options feel like they naturally form a conversation that could happen in real life. Like any of this could be real. You learn that, she has her own problems. She has her own past. Sometimes she'll call you on the walkie-talkie and she's kind of drunk. So, she's very much not a perfect person. Neither are you as Henry, and because neither of you are perfect people, you form this really deep bond that you as the player, whether you're male or female or anything else, whoever you may be, you can feel very connected and very invested in the game. And of course, Firewatch is sort of derogatorily referred to as a walking simulator because, again, there's like no action. Mm-hmm. You're just walking through the state park in the first-person view of Henry, and you are completing some very basic tasks. Along the way, and along your interactions with Delilah, you kind of come across a mystery of the game, which becomes your propeller for getting to the bottom of the game's central story, which is, hey, some people have been going missing in the park. You find abandoned backpacks. You find certain things that make you think some really bad shit is going on here. Yeah. So getting to the bottom of that mystery is your primary means for progressing through the game. And you do that progress with Delilah always on the other end of your walkie-talkie. And even though you never actually do interact with her face-to-face, you feel like you had a life bond, like almost a soulmate kind of situation with the person on the other line. And because of how impactful that relationship was, that's what just propelled Firewatch up into the stratosphere for me.
Yeah.
I still think it is one of the most impactful emotional games I've ever played, which is why it outpaced Rime by 6 spaces.
Yeah.
I think it is arguably the superior experience in terms of it being a relatively simplistic game. It has a very simple interface, simple but beautiful graphics. The graphics are quite stunning.
It's a great art style.
It's beautiful, very well done. Sometimes I'll get to a cliffside and just kind of look out over the horizons. Just take a look around. Yeah. Just see what's going on.
Take a gander.
You can get attacked by a raccoon. That's a lot of fun.
No.
You can find a turtle and you can name him Turt Reynolds. It's so funny. So even though it deals with some really heavy themes and a lot of stuff that is just a real bummer, it does have moments that are really lighthearted and that again show that both Henry and Delilah are just normal people trying to do their best in lives that could be better.
Yeah.
So they're both in kind of difficult circumstances, and the game doesn't shy away from that, and it approaches it in a very sensitive way that makes it feel very real. So Firewatch, number 4.
Number 4.
Almost made it into the top 4.
Almost there.
Almost.
So I went back and looked. The voice actress of Delilah, Cissy Jones, she did win a BAFTA Games Award for Best Performance in 2017.
Cissy Jones.
Also, tie-in, she's the voice of Joyce Price in Life is Strange, season 1.
Oh, for a minute I thought you were going to say the wife of Captain Price.
Oh, no. Chloe's mother.
Okay,
Chloe's mother in Life is Strange.
Sense. I love Joyce. Oh my God, I would never have realized that.
There it is.
For all you know, that could have been Joyce out in the middle of the wilderness.
That's true. Same area.
Having her new life. Oh God.
All right. So my number 4 game. This is one that I have picked. It's a series, and it's one that I have picked as favorite of the series, but I have to kind of throw in and lump in the whole series as a whole.
Assassin's Creed?
No.
Damn it.
Assassin's Creed actually does not make my list.
I know it's not Doom because you've only played 1.
I've talked about this a lot.
You've talked about it a lot. It's not Assassin's Creed.
Not Assassin's Creed.
Is it a Far Cry game?
No.
Oh, damn
I talked about Far Cry.
Wow,
Far Cry 3.
Okay, you already did. Horizon is just 1. All right, I give up.
Civilization.
Oh, of course.
The age-old turn-based strategy game that I have played and loved and adored for quite some time. Started with Civilization 2, playing Civilization 6 now. The only one that I have not played in between there is Civilization 4.
And isn't that like the most popular one by most
Just for some reason,
standards?
I missed that one completely. But no, Civilization, why I love the series and why the series as a whole hits my number 4 is because I've talked about this on other episodes. History has always been kind of like my second love. Lesser so now, but it's especially growing up, I loved history. I loved reading about like ancient and medieval civilizations, specifically those time periods. And I always thought like American history and all that was boring.
Oh, because it is boring.
We know all about
it's
it, you
boring
know what
AF.
And so, and kind of depressing overall.
Yeah,
but
it's mostly bad.
But anyway, so I've always loved ancient and medieval time periods, especially for it's specifically even the warfare. That's always been my thing that I kind of like gravitated to and like wanted to read all about, learn all about the different kinds of these ancient civilizations, ancient cultures, and how they progressed over time when they were defeated out and brought into other empires and conquered and all that other stuff.
You're all about that barbarian life.
Well, not even the barbarian life. Like it's it's fascinating to me. Like the rise of the Roman Empire and how they spread. Alexander the Great's empire. even like the Norman invasion of England.
The Ottoman Empire.
The Ottoman
perhaps.
Empire. All those
that was
different
actually
things.
way more recent.
Way more recent, but still a valid one.
Still there.
It
still
started
there.
like in the late medieval period, carried over pretty recent. But I just always loved all that. And Civilization was my way to be able to live that out. And I loved it for that. Civilization 2 was, very simplistic. Your units just slid over a very 8-bit, 16-bit style map, not a whole lot there. Had some great, wonderful little simplistic music that played along, but it still gave you that feeling. Civilization 3 was a huge step graphically, whereas now your characters would move and there would be battle sequences that would take place. Your cities would actually like grow and expand and take over, and you could go like the city view and see a very in-depth, detailed look at your city that you were building. And it really expounded upon it. Like I said, Civ 4, I didn't really play, but Civ 5 and Civ 6, then, took it on and started growing more things. Now you can have like religions and faiths and great people and all these other different little things that they've now added in. Not to mention now even way more empires that you could be, and they keep adding new ones, especially with expansion packs. And it's just one that I've consistently played, consistently loved, because it still keeps that bit of that love of history for me alive. Now, my favorite of the series, and the one that I guess officially takes this number 4 spot in my list, is Civilization 3.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because that one, if for nothing else, sheer amount of hours played.
Nice.
And
how old would you have been when you were really into Civ 3?
13.
Wow.
It came out in 2003.
So it was really one of your earlier games.
Yeah.
Because this was in your pre-console days.
Yes. Very pre-console days.
Yeah.
Still playing on the Mac, And so... and it was one of the few non-educational games that I had.
Oh, it's very educational.
It's educational in its own way, but like still, if I was trying to say like, "Hey, Mom and Dad, can I play this because I want to learn?" They'd be like, "That's pushing it." But anyway, so Civilization 3 for the main, and it's one of those games too. You can play for so long, and especially then at that time, I was only allowed 30 minutes a day to play.
Oh God,
if that.
Oh,
that's not a whole lot of time.
That's not enough time to do anything.
The only computer that could run it was my dad's computer. And he was using it throughout the week. So really the only day I could play it was like Sundays after he was done, after church and stuff, when he wasn't preaching and doing work on it and stuff.
That's borderline child abuse. That's definitely...
I had plenty of other things I could do to entertain myself with. But so I usually always played as the Persian Empire because I loved their special unique unit, the Immortal, because I had this badass sword. It was an incredibly powerful, strong unit. Like I was still using Immortals in the modern age. It shouldn't have made any historical sense, but it did make sense at the game, and I loved it.
They were still bad.
But it's still just this taking the whole thing about it. Like you're building your empire, you're founding cities, you're managing the city's economy, you're managing an empire, you're managing your citizens, you're managing your army, and then you obviously are dealing with the influences of the other empires that are playing against you. And that's what I just loved about was balancing. Normally, though, I will say for when I was 13, I usually just loved being a warmonger. Would build up a massive army and just go attack everybody and try to just win by total military domination. But now my play style has shifted where I do try to be more diplomatic or maybe even go for scientific victories and different things like that. But I know I'm not like the greatest Civ player ever. And I know that to other people who have spent way more time in the games and in the series and have just spent more hours period playing, like I'm on the Civ subreddit and people be like, just hit 2,000 hours playing Civ 6. And I'm like, oh my God, what?
I'm not even sure if I have that many hours in Overwatch.
Right? And so, it's all this different stuff. And, so I know I'm not like, if I were to be put in a competition, I wouldn't be that good. And honestly, the games that I've won to the games I've lost, I maybe won 5 games of Civilization. It's a difficult game to win, especially as you try to play on harder difficulty levels. There's a lot to take into consideration. Not only, all this diplomacy, but the resources that are nearby. How close to this water should I settle my city? Am I settling too close to my enemies? All these different things. And I loved all the diplomacy and how you'd interact with the trade and the bargaining and haggling that you would do with the other leaders to try to get the best deals, the best resources, the best technologies. And then eventually how sometimes those would all just fall apart and they start declaring war on you left and right. They'd form alliances, come against you. You'd be calling your allies coming against each other.
It's like, you sons of bitches.
And then, of course, it gave us to the weird thing of Gandhi being a complete nuclear warmonger, which is its own in-joke and meme in the civilization community as it is. But it really, and that's just why it is number 4 for me. I can't, like I said, I'm not great at it. I'm not, I haven't played and completed that many games. I haven't even finished a game of Civ 6 yet. And it's been out for almost a year, I think. And it's just that it's a slightly nostalgic. And also just because it's one of those things that did help me keep alive and continue and fester to grow and nurture my love of history. And so that's honestly why it sits at number 4.
It's got its claws in you.
It does.
And it's never
going to let go.
Nice.
So it's a great game. It's a great series. If you ever have the inkling to try it out, you should.
Which Civ has Baba yet to?
4.
Oh, the one you haven't played.
But Civ 6, the Civ 6, Sogno di Volare is the main theme. Also by Christopher Tin, same guy.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one yet.
It's great. You know what we're going to do then?
Yeah, you should do that first.
We're going to roll into this. Sogno di Volare is going to be our soundtrack spotlight for this week.
I'm excited for it.
It's a great one. So
we were going to do something else, but
I feel like I maybe might have used this one a long time ago, but it's been a long time ago.
It deserves to be listened to again.
So soundtrack spotlight is Sogno di Volare, the main theme of Civilization 6, composed by Christopher Tin. It is. But if you've not listened to his main theme for Civilization 4, Baba Yetu, you should. God. It is an amazing piece of music.
Listen to the version from Video Games Live. Yes. It is so good.
It's so good. But this one, Sogno di Volare, is a different tone. It's more of a classical music themed than Baba Yetu, where that one is, sang in Swahili, has a, beautiful vocals and chords. And this one does too, but it's more of a classical style. But it's still very bombastic, epic, subtle, and just all this mix with wonderful melodies. And it's a fantastic one that kind of ties in the scope of what you're going to experience when you play a Civilization game.
Very nice.
So that is why Sogno di Volare is going to be our soundtrack spotlight for this week. But with that concludes this episode of Team Chat Podcast. Again, we'll be back for the final installment of this series where we will list our games 3, 2, and the all-important number 1 game of all time to round out our top 10 list. So obviously, if you have not shared with us your top 10 games, we'd love to hear about them. And so send those our way by sending us an email, teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Send us a message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, reply in the comments of this YouTube video, any way you want, but that's how you can get that to us. And then also, of course, into that PS4 giveaway. We'd love for somebody to go home with a really bright. Somebody's going to go home with it, but we'd love for
give Kevin a home. It could be you.
Yeah, give Kevin a home.
He deserves a new home.
He deserves the love. But that concludes this episode of Team Chat Podcast, everybody. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Mogan.
Adios.
We'll see you all next time. Stick around for the song.